views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm your host, Daren Jaime. Today, we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough, as well as across New York City. Coming up on today's show, we'll go front and center with New York State's efforts to protect residential and commercial tenants from eviction amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, including a new pushback by the governor. Also, we'll discuss how one of the nation's largest not-for-profit health insurers is providing thousands of supplies and resources to the Bronx community. And then we'll learn about a not-for-profit organization dedicated to making life better for all people who are affected by Tourette Syndrome and tic disorders. And then a little later on, we'll talk about how another not-for-profit is providing a continuous lifeline of nourishing meals and vital companionship to New York City's homebound elderly. And then finally, we'll speak with the Chief Diversity Officer of SHARE on healthcare disparities with breast cancer in underserved women. So we encourage you to stay with us. We got a full show happening today. Open starts right now. And hello, everyone. I am Daren Jaime, and today is Wednesday, October 28th, and you're watching Open, a live and interactive program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to your TV sets. We also want to welcome our viewers on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, as Open is being broadcast live simultaneously on MNN's channels. And if you want, we encourage you to stay connected to us on all of our social media platforms at BronxNet TV, and then always on our website at bronxnet.org. Well, a lot has certainly been going on throughout the course of this past week. We can't take you through everything. We'll bring you a couple of things with our Bronx updates. Kicking off our Bronx updates, city officials as well as community residents held a press conference recently to deal with Intro 2089 to help struggling minority-owned businesses. Our BronxNet reporter Kim Nalene has the story and brings us the details.
As the winter months approach, elected officials predict minority-owned restaurants will continue to suffer greatly due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Now that it's getting colder outside, you're going to see less and less customers.
In a press conference, Councilmember Fernando Cabrera announced his effort to help struggling minority-owned establishments. Introducing Intro 2089, Cabrera is asking the city to allow hookah sales while dining outdoors. The councilmember says the bill will extend a lifeline to several restaurants across the city.
Intro 2089 would allow for restaurant establishment to be able to have 25% of the outdoor seating to be dedicated to the use of hookah.
Councilmember Antonio Reynoso shares the city has failed to financially support small businesses. Cabrera and supporters of the bill hope the addition of non-shared outdoor hookah will help minority-owned establishments generate revenue to support their business.
There's been no help from the city, the state, or the federal government when it comes to loans and actual financial help. So this, no matter how much money it generates, whether it's $500 a week or $1,000 a week, will go a long way.
Representing several businesses across the city, President of the New York State Latino Restaurant Bar and Lounge Association, Jeffrey Garcia, understands the limitations of the bill, but believes it can make an impact.
So we understand that this little bit of a lifeline to be able to sell hookah in your business can help all small businesses that do sell it. So, it's very important that even when things don't actually affect you, but they affect the industry, we have to support it.
Reporting for BronxNet, Kibben Aline.
Thank you, Kibben. In other news, a Blue Lives Matter, a police support rally, as well as a Black Lives Matter counter protest took place in front of the 40th precinct here in the borough of the Bronx. Our BronxNet reporter Sanji Lopez brings us the details on this important story.
Blue Lives Matter NYC and the National Latino Peace Officers Association held a rally called Strength Through Unity to support the NYPD in front of the 40th precinct between 139th Street and Alexander Avenue in Mott Haven.
We want to see unity in New York City. We want to see the honor brought back to it. And the voices of all, not just a few, the voices of everybody. That can be. It was once before, it can be again.
We're coming out here to show our support for our police officers, because they really seem to be under attack, not only by certain factions within the community, they're under attack by our leaders, our elected leaders as well. When they get overwhelmed, it's the citizens in the street that suffer. It's not the politicians, and it's not the bad people. It's the good people of the communities that suffer when everybody attacks the police.
The rally was met with counter-protests by Mott Haven families, a group of residents who have gathered at this corner every Sunday morning since June. They say that the NYPD in the Bronx mistreated Black Lives Matter protesters here in Mott Haven back on June 4th.
Police officers from all over the city and the 40th precinct decided to brutalize peaceful protesters on 136th Street. They actually kettled them. There's over 200 arrests. And a new report came out that there was over 256 human rights violations that actually happened. So my family and I and the community decided to come together and every week put some attention to this in the Mott Haven area.
You guys are needed, right? Because, you guys actually keep all of us in check. And we appreciate that.
While some individual conversations happened between officers and community members at this event, both groups left with plenty of unanswered questions on how to move forward.
We are not out here protesting against anyone. I kind of find it confusing why they're out here protesting against us, just showing support for our community.
To be honest with you, I don't know what their rationale is. I don't know. On the flyers, it says that they're trying to build unity, but it's really difficult to build unity when you don't have trust. And it's really difficult to build unity when you have this open wound that you haven't really taken care of.
Reporting for BronxNet, Sanji Lopez.
And thank you, Sanji. That's all the time we have for our Bronx updates. We encourage you to stay connected to us and with us. We're taking a quick break. Open will return right after this.
Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Remember, we're not just voting for president, we're also voting for local representation here in the Bronx. Vote411.org/ballot is a great resource to find out what other races are happening and who is running to represent your community. Simply enter your address, then click Show My Races. You will see a sample ballot displaying the presidential race and other local races taking place in your district. Early voting starts between October 24th to November 1st, and absentee ballots are due no later than November 3rd.
Welcome back. The COVID-19 pandemic has certainly had devastating health and economic impact across many in this nation. Recently, Governor Andrew M. Cuomo signed an executive order extending the state's moratorium on COVID-related commercial evictions and foreclosures through January the 1st. The measure also extends protections already in place for commercial tenants and mortgagors in recognition of the financial toll the pandemic has taken on business owners, including retail establishments, as well as restaurants. Joining us now to share a little bit more about the discussion, including this recent extension, we are pleased to have joining us the partner at David A. Gallo and Associates, Robert Link, and we're glad to have Robert Link with us. And Robert, good to have you.
Thanks, Daren. Great to be here. Thank you again for having me.
Oh, thank you. It seems like every time we talk, the governor seems to be making some sort of new push or new extension. But give us a little bit about this here. We've got January 1st. This new extension is in place. Let's talk to about what this actually means for as tenants as well as landlords.
Okay, what the extension means is if you have a COVID hardship and the landlord wants to bring a non-payment eviction where you haven't defaulted on your landlord-tenant rental payments, they have to wait until the end of the year in order to do that. In fact, there's legislation that says, that's been passed and approved by the governor, that says even when they bring that non-payment proceeding, the landlord is able to seek the money due, but they're not able to evict you if you're able to prove that you have a COVID-related hardship. Now, even though there are these protections, and there's federal protections that say non-payment proceedings for those of us who are facing COVID hardships is going to be, there's going to be a reprieve until the end of the year. Notwithstanding that, holdovers can be brought right now. So you can bring a holdover eviction. And what that means is if you don't have a lease, or if you had a month-to-month lease and your landlord decided to terminate that month-to-month lease, they can actually proceed with the eviction process. Now, even though they can technically, under the executive order and under the CDC guidance, and under the statutory relief that's been passed by lawmakers in Albany, even though they can proceed with those holdovers, nothing is really moving forward at this point. The court is moving very slow at a snail's pace to deal with the evictions that it was dealing with back before March 17th happened, before we had the COVID pandemic, for those who their lease expired or they weren't making rental payments before March 17th. And because the courts are really busy right now dealing with those cases where you have landlord harassment or landlords taking actions where they're removing possessions without authority of a sheriff. So you have the courts tied up with those cases. They have to deal with these cases in a socially distant way. So you're not going to see those new holdover cases, particularly in the city of New York, being dealt with until February, until March, until April. And we're really, in my opinion, as long as you're answering your holdover petition, as long as you're responding and raising the relevant defenses, I really don't see this thing picking up until May or June of next year.
So honestly, if I'm a landlord, I really can potentially be in trouble financially, given the fact that you're saying the older priority is going to be given to cases that actually took place beforehand. So now to deal with this in the after COVID, you're going to be second priority, if you will. So for a landlord, it may be tough to actually survive.
The small-time landlords are in some trouble. And the best thing you can do, and I represent some landlords, is to give them, reach out to your tenant and try to come to an amicable solution where the tenant is paying what they can. I just resolved a case up in Harlem where the tenant was paying, I'd say, about 60% of her rental income. The landlord wasn't happy with that, but I convinced the landlord, listen, 60 cents is more than half a loaf. And right now, that's probably the best you're going to get. So what we did in that situation is we said, let's revisit where we stand in, I think it was June of next year, and we'll take a reprieve. We'll accept 60 cents of the dollar without any prejudice to anyone's rights under the lease. And then we'll revisit the situation in June. We'll look at what the relevant rents are in the area, and we'll come to an agreement. I've been encouraging most of my landlord clients to do something similar. If you're a tenant, that's also a good thing, as long as you're paying an amount that you can afford, but you want to be careful about agreeing to a long-term agreement that maybe works for you now, but doesn't work for you 3, 4, 5 months from now. Don't agree to something because you feel like you're under the barrel of a gun, because quite frankly, if you're a tenant, you're not. You have plenty of time to make an arrangement and appear in court and exercise your rights. You just have to make sure and show up in court, respond, or if you don't feel like going to court, call the number at the court helpline and make an arrangement to have a postponement or appear via Zoom or whatever conference call to handle your defenses and conferencing that way.
Do we see this being even more played out, given the fact that here we are in New York City talking about a potential second wave, and with a potential second wave, of course, there are going to be more closures. Of course, there's going to be more safeguards in place. And so this whole thing, as you say, possibly June for commercial, but this whole thing could actually be playing out for possibly another year or even years possibly to come.
Sure. I think you will see, Daren, to answer that question, you're going to see litigation for years. Appeals take years to sometimes play out in our state court system. And we have this guidance, administrative orders, executive orders, there's new laws. And a lot of times we're not going to know what these laws mean because the language is somewhat contradictory or not 100% clear. It's not going to be clear what the language means until we see all this play out. So it's going to be interesting to see tenants raise these defenses, mid next year, and then we'll start to have a better idea as the year progresses. But you're seeing with this postponements to December and beyond, really responding to the concern you raised. What we don't want to just start, 100% going back into court, having full calendars and having full courtrooms, because at the end of the day, we don't know if there's going to be a second wave, and we don't want to have to shut everything down 100% again. So we're creaking the door open little by little to start to deal with cases in a way that respects everybody's rights to the best that they can. And then towards the end of the year, we'll reassess the situation and determine if there needs to be a further extension of the moratorium. You're going to see a lot of landlords bring holdover evictions as opposed to non-payment evictions, because the easier thing to prove in certain circumstances is, well, this person doesn't have a lease, as opposed to this person didn't comply with the terms of the lease. So you might see a lot of that next year, where the landlords are bringing holdovers as opposed to non-payments.
Yeah, we talked a lot about commercial. I only have a couple of seconds left to talk about residential. But when we look at residential, a lot of the same things will probably happen, huh?
Oh, yeah, definitely. What I'm saying about commercial also applies to residential. We're barely getting started in the residential context. You're having some cases, particularly where there's some sort of emergency circumstance, the court, escalating those matters. But by and large, new cases are being adjourned into March, into April and beyond. That's when I think the first cases, the cases that were brought in 2020 that are after the pandemic period, that's when I think we're going to start to first see those cases. And then if those renters are interposing an answer to the complaint, to the petition, then there'll be a date scheduled for a trial, or there might be some actual discovery if it's a non-payment. Because remember, there's the Tenant Safe Harbor Act. So if you're in default on your lease and you're not paying your lease because you've had a reduction in income, the New York State Legislature and Governor Cuomo have said that that is an affirmative defense to your eviction. It doesn't mean you don't have to pay your rent. You still owe the money technically, and you could, I guess, file a bankruptcy and deal with that issue, but they cannot evict you on that basis alone. But that is something that has to be raised in your answer to the petition. So if you qualify for a free attorney, that's something that you want to take advantage of. Also at the courts, if you go down to the courts, if you call the numbers, there's information on downloading a pro se answer, or you can hire an attorney or appear by yourself. The most important thing is to be familiar with these laws and how they apply to you, and take advantage of them.
All righty. Robert M. Link, we're going to have to leave it there. Attorney Robert M. Link, and we want to thank you for being with us here on Open, giving us some much needed information for a time such as this. Thanks a lot, Robert.
Daren, anytime. Thank you.
All right. We got more Open. We want you to stay with us. More show coming up right after this. And welcome back here to Open. EmblemHealth is one of the nation's largest not-for-profit health insurers with over 3.2 million members and an 80-year legacy of serving the New York City community. EmblemHealth has recently hosted a back to school and healthy food giveaway events across the Bronx. They distribute supplies, food, as well as healthy resources. And here now to share a little bit more about the work of EmblemHealth, we are pleased to be joined by the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer, Beth Leonard. And Beth, good to have you.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. It's glad to have you as well. Well, I mean, I honestly know that we are in the midst of some challenging times, but I know, as we said, EmblemHealth taking care of more than 3.2 New York City residents. But I want you to talk a little bit about just the whole giving back, because of COVID-19, a lot of people have been facing some challenges, but EmblemHealth has really stepped up to the plate in terms of trying to give back to the community.
Well, thank you so much. We're really happy that we are able to really live our mission. As a not-for-profit, it has always been our mission over the last 80 years of our existence to not only take care of our members, but the customers we serve, and most importantly, the communities we served. We were actually founded during the Great Depression, and we've survived 9/11, Hurricane Sandy, and now we're faced with a global pandemic right here. So over the summer, from July and September, we were proud to partner with other local not-for-profits, community organizations, and some of the great Bronx elected officials to ensure that we were addressing food insecurity, which we know is a barrier to not only your well-being, but your health. So EmblemHealth, and partnering with these folks, we're able to give out over 5,000 masks that are reusable. So we know that this is really important as we prevent not only COVID, but the upcoming flu season. Back to school supplies, over 4,000 backpacks, as well as over 2,000 bags of produce, as well as pantry supplies, those canned goods, those boxed goods, all healthy items that you can make sure that meals are being made out of.
Yeah. And with boots on the ground, obviously you have a lot of opportunity to see exactly what Bronx residents, as well as those across the city, are actually navigating through. Give us your perspective about what you saw on the street as you were being able to distribute these things. Because with COVID-19, we had a lot of people who were desperate for food as well as resources. Give us a little bit more about what you saw and how it really impacted the community.
Absolutely. So what we see first and foremost, I think for a lot of us, including myself, is people just want to be asked, how are you? How are you doing? I think as this pandemic wears on, and again, as flu season and other factors continue to come at us, it's really first and foremost about how are you faring? We've really seen an uptick in the need for mental health services. And so being out in the community was not only a chance to make sure that we were giving needed supplies, but frankly, to connect with folks, obviously in a socially distanced, masked, appropriate way. But just those simple interactions, I think at this time when so many of our residents, especially our older residents, have really been homebound, that connection's really important, which is why EmblemHealth is not only out in the community, but we've been working to stand up virtual programming so that we can really, try and give people healthy resources, but also that basic human connection.
Yeah. And amidst COVID-19, we understand that there are some racial disparities that have taken place. Of course, those in communities of color being more adversely affected by COVID-19, and not only COVID-19, but when we talk about healthcare, right? It's really some racial disparities that continue to affect those in communities of color. I know that you have done some great work in terms of working with the communities, but give us a little bit about the racial disparities and what you see.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we see what all of us have seen as well, which is that COVID-19 and other underlying health factors, whether it be diabetes, heart disease, have disproportionately affected parts of our city that are underserved. As a not-for-profit health plan that has been operating in this very diverse city, it's always been a part of our mission to make sure that we're meeting people where they are. We know that what determines your healthy outlook is often your zip code, your access to those healthy foods, your access to things like telemedicine. During this pandemic, we've seen you're able to connect with a doctor, over just like we're doing today or over the phone. But if you don't have a device in your home or high-speed internet, how does that affect your ability to connect? So at EmblemHealth, almost a decade ago, we started EmblemHealth Neighborhood Care. These are 12 community free walk-in centers where you can come in, you can use our Wi-Fi, we can help you find a primary care physician, that navigator that's going to help connect you to not only, your regular immunizations and those things that are so important to your health, but also specialists should you need it. We also help connect you to transportation benefits, housing, and food. Again, this has really been a fabric of who we are since our inception in terms of protecting hardworker New Yorkers. And there's no place that it's more important than I think now, when we're really seeing the effects of this horrible, disease even more affecting those that don't have access to regular healthcare and regular food. It's also why EmblemHealth is making sure that we're continuing to be out in the community, again, safe, our employees are safe with masks, socially distanced, and protocols, but we want to make sure that, especially as people lose maybe their employer coverage, that people are getting signed up for health insurance, which is why we sell everything from Medicaid to Medicare, all the way to commercial plans. Again, it's all part of the health ecosystem, but it starts with making sure that people have affordable, accessible coverage so that they can then get to the doctor for both keeping well and hopefully staying well.
Yeah, we're talking about staying well during a time like this. That's the most important thing. Here across New York City, of course, we're hearing a lot about the potential of a second wave, and not just the second wave, but also that coupled with flu season. What would you want to tell us about flu season and the importance of really taking care of yourself?
I would tell you first and foremost, please go get your flu shot. Flu shots are available often free of charge. If you do have health insurance coverage or you need it, give us a call. But also local pharmacies. We have 3 physicians groups in the Bronx by the name of Bronx Docs. You can get a flu shot there. You can also get access to a primary care physician and a specialist. We offer culturally competent care and speak multiple languages. We're also partnering with those same folks that we did the food events with, elected officials, pharmacies, community groups, to make sure that the flu shot is accessible. I know there's a lot of concern about efficacy. Does it work? Will it hurt? But what I can tell you is, as we approach a twindemic with both COVID and the flu, anything that affects your underlying ability to fight, a symptom is really important. So continue to wash your hands, continue to wear your mask, but go out and get the flu shot. And again, we're partnering with others to make sure that flu shots are free of charge or affordable to those who might not have coverage.
Beth, Leonard, very important information. Thank you for sharing and being with us here on Open and letting us know the importance of getting that flu shot. Beth, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
We do have more show. We want you to stay with us. Daren, Jaime here with you. More Open will return right after this. And thank you for staying with us. The Tourette Syndrome of America is a not-for-profit organization that's actually dedicated to making life better for all individuals affected by Tourette's as well as tic disorders. As the only national organization serving the community, the TAA works to raise awareness, advance research, as well as provide ongoing support to patients as well as their families. They educate professionals better serving the needs of children, adults, and families challenged by Tourette and tic disorders. And joining us now to share a little bit more is the CEO and president of the Tourette Association of America, Amanda Talty. And Amanda, good to have you.
It's very nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Daren.
Thank you. And I thank you for taking the time and sharing with us a little bit, because I think for many people, there's some stereotypes, some misunderstandings when it comes to Tourette's. So I'm glad to have you sharing here with us. For our viewers, please give us a little bit about exactly how do you define Tourette syndrome?
Sure. So Tourette syndrome is defined by having one motor tic and also one vocal tic. So what's interesting about Tourette syndrome is really all tics are motor tics, because there's muscles in the body that create noises in the same way that they create movement. But you really need to have something that is audible, which could be something as simple as a throat clearing or a sniffle. As well as some sort of a physical motor tic, like let's say stomping your foot repeatedly. And that needs to, in some form or fashion, exist for about a year before you can be formally diagnosed with Tourette syndrome. But, tics ticks, they wax, they wane, they change. So it can often be very hard for families and individuals to get that official diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. And so when you have a tic disorder and you have Tourette syndrome, a lot of people ask questions about treatment. How do you go about treating and dealing with Tourette's and tic disorders?
So there are a number of ways. There's of course some medicines available for the treatment of it. There's about 3 medications that are currently approved and on the market for the treatment of Tourette syndrome. However, those are often ineffective. So what has been found is there is a behavioral intervention that was recently recommended by the American Academy of Neurology as a first-line treatment, and that's called comprehensive behavioral intervention for tics. It's considered a habit reversal therapy that's proven to be very effective, especially with young children. And in essence, it empowers individuals living with Tourette syndrome to better sense an oncoming tic, and for those tics that are particularly disruptive, make a conscious effort to channel the tic into a different part of the body. So in other words, if your tic is to do this, right, through working through the therapy, rather than allowing the body to go up this way, you train your muscles to do the counter movement, which is to push down. So that's highly recommended currently. And again, it's a first line treatment. And then outside of that, medications are available. What's complicated about Tourette syndrome is it's not just the tics. 85% of individuals living with Tourette syndrome also have a diagnosed comorbidity, such as ADHD or OCD or anxiety. So depending on what additional treatments and therapy you may require for those coexisting conditions, sometimes those treatments will exacerbate the tics, and sometimes they'll exacerbate some of the other symptoms. So it's a very nuanced condition that unfortunately is not really well known, and to your earlier point, is often misunderstood. I'm sure most of your viewers are probably aware of Tourette syndrome in the cursing disorder vein, right? That most people think that it's just the utterance of obscenities, and that really only impacts about 10% of the Tourette syndrome community.
Yeah. Well, I'm a basketball player, so I became very familiar with Tourette's even more watching Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, a basketball player who actually played in the NBA and actually had Tourette's and was still able to play in the NBA. And it was there that I understood a little bit more about how you can have Tourette's and have a great amount of functionality.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Tourette syndrome does not, it can certainly impede certain day-to-day activities. There are individuals in the community that it does meaningfully impact their quality of life. But Tourette syndrome is a spectrum. Some people have milder symptoms than others. And I think, there are many people who function quite well. There are many celebrities that function quite well with Tourette syndrome. Dash Mihawk, who is a very famous actor, Tim Howard, famous soccer player, Billie Eilish, who many people now know, Grammy award-winning music artist, Jamie Grace. There are so many notable individuals in the Tourette community who, despite their tics, despite their co-occurring conditions, have really been able to do incredible things. And we at the Tourette Association really embrace the resilience within the community. We all, I think, have most of us have what I'll call our invisible disabilities, our invisible challenges, and people in the Tourette community, they really, it's very visible to the public. And I think their tenacity and their ability to go out into the world every day with something that they can't control, right? Something that their bodies are betraying them in sometimes the worst of circumstances, and they're still getting up every day and they're going out and they're going to work and they're going to school, and they're facing that ostracization head on, I think builds a certain amount of character and empathy within the community that I think enables the individuals to be very successful in life.
Yeah, I know you do incredible work with your organization in terms of taking the awareness of Tourette's around the country, and also promoting, awareness. Give us a little bit. I know you got a virtual gala coming up, and so share with us a little bit before we go about your organization and also the gala.
So we are the only national organization dedicated to serving the Tourette syndrome and tic disorder community, and we are absolutely thrilled to be hosting our first ever virtual gala, right? 2020 has kind of forced everybody to do business a little bit differently.
A little bit.
So we have moved our gala, which is our largest fundraiser of the year every year, to virtual platform. But we are super excited about it. We have an excellent program. A lot of notable individuals are participating in it. We have Dash, we have Tim Howard, who I've already referenced, speaking. We also have John Lithgow giving a message to the Tourette community, Dylan McDermott, Callista Flockhart. So there are a lot of individuals who have come out to share their message of understanding, and who are really trying to help us raise awareness. And that is this Thursday, the 29th. If anybody's interested in attending, we have tickets. They're currently available. And you can visit our website, tourette.org/gala, Gala. And you could go there and learn more about the event. And I hope everybody will dial in. It's really, we're doing it from the comfort of our homes this year, right? Sit back, relax, enjoy the program. But we really hope that people will take advantage of it so that they can learn about Tourette syndrome, learn the facts about it, hear people's stories, how they're living with it, and really help us spread the word. We'd love for the general public to really truly appreciate what this condition is, so that the next time they're in a restaurant and somebody's doing something at the table that maybe they shouldn't, or banging on the table or something, rather than just assuming that it's a child who needs to be disciplined, they really stop and think, maybe this is just something that child can't control.
Yeah. Well, before we go, I want to get you an opportunity to just if I ask you this question, real quick answer. Talk to me about the message. If you could send a message about Tourette's very quickly, what would it be to those who are watching?
Tourette syndrome is a very public condition. The people who are living with it, they can't control it. It is involuntary, the movements and the sounds that they make. So please, if you see somebody or know somebody who is doing things that you don't understand, just ask and be sensitive and extend compassion to them, because I think that's really all anybody wants. They want to know that other people care, other people understand, and I think that's really the most important thing, especially during this very difficult year.
Yeah. Amanda, thank you so much for the time, the awareness, and making people a little bit more aware about all that goes on with Tourette syndrome, and most of all for the great work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All righty. Well, we do have more show. We want you to stay with us. Daren, Jaime here with you. We'll have more open when we return right after this. And thank you for staying with us. Citymeals on Wheels is a not-for-profit organization that is providing a continuous lifeline of nourishing meals as well as vital companionship to New York City's homebound elderly. As the designated emergency responder for city seniors, Citymeals has actually delivered over 1.4 million meals since the start of COVID-19. And Citymeals has added over 2,500 people to its delivery routes during this time. It is now serving over 20,000 homebound elderly New Yorkers. Here now to share a little bit more is the executive director of Citymeals on Wheels. We're pleased to be joined by Beth Shapiro. And Beth, good to have you back here on Open.
Thank you, Daren. It's very nice to be here.
Yeah, and I'm glad to have you, but I know that for you also, it's a very critical time talking about COVID-19. And one of the things that we've been talking about across the nation is food insecurity. And so for you at Citymeals, talk to me about New York City and how you've navigated the process of how to, providing meals to so many people as the need increases.
Yeah, we saw a huge increase of need, obviously right in the beginning of COVID, and ended up we've fed over 34,000 older New Yorkers who were not originally on our rolls. And always, or historically before COVID, 1 in 10 older New Yorkers was hungry. We're only seeing increases in that number now. And I think as we get into winter, look, you and I are dealing with isolation like we never have before. The homebound elderly that we nourish deal with that every day. And all older New Yorkers now need to stay in. And even, on a nice day yesterday, brisk but nice, you could get out, you could go to the corner market. But as winter hits, that's going to be even more challenging, both for your physical well-being, the slippery streets, but also your physical safety and in staying away from COVID.
I grew up in the streets of, well, I won't say the streets. I grew up in Harlem, New York, of course, and we lived in low-income housing, St. Nicholas projects. I remember Citymeals on Wheels actually coming to serve meals to my father, and he was elderly at the time, and the meals came, and it made all the difference in the world, because even though he was elderly and blind, he couldn't really make it to the streets a lot. And it really just filled an important gap. Talk to us about that, because for those who are elderly, for those who are homebound, and also isolated at this time, meals make an important difference.
Yes, meals coming to the door, and also that check-in, right? So it's a healthy, nutritious meal coming every day. Our weekend services, weekday services remained uninterrupted during COVID. And in addition to the meal, it is still a check-in to make sure that person who is home alone is okay. Of course, we've adapted, right? Before COVID, you could go in, sometimes hug a person when you've had a long relationship with them, a deliverer and a meal recipient. Now it's through the door. We hang the meal on a doorknob. We knock. We make sure the person opens and is there to get their meal. And we are still checking in on them. It is critical to have some connectivity to the outside world. We say we're nourishing body and soul. So it is as important. The nutrition is as important as that human connection.
Yeah. What can you tell us a little bit more about food insecurity as it relates to seniors? Because we know that they're the most vulnerable population, and in this COVID situation with isolation at an all-time high and the potential of a second surge, seniors continue to be that vulnerable population that has a tremendous need.
You're right. Absolutely. Seniors are most vulnerable. They are isolated. We are seeing higher and higher incidence of poverty as people age in New York, and their access to food is truly limited. And we have to be able to bring food to them to make sure they're getting nutrition that they need to stay healthy, for their medications to work as they should, and for them to stay safe in their homes. And COVID is just exacerbating the situation for the most vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, you have an emergency meal distribution center. Share a little bit about the work that's going on through that.
Our emergency meal distribution center is right in the Bronx, right out in Hunts Point. And almost all of our emergency work has come from there in the face of COVID. So last year, we did about almost 500,000 meals from the emergency center as a whole. And from March until September, we did over 700,000 emergency meals from there, just making sure they're shelf-stable meals getting to the homes that need them. And right now, we're packing our annual emergency food package. So it's a box of 4 shelf-stable meals, healthy, tuna, chicken salad, crackers. We even throw in some nice treats of hot cocoa and low sugar cookies, because we all like that, especially as it starts to get cold out. And these meals are boxes are going to over 20,000 homebound elderly New Yorkers who really rely on them as the winter gets harsh, and they're, to make sure there's extra food on hand.
Yeah, we're talking about the winter coming right around the corner. I really don't want to talk about that right now, but I'm going to have to. With the winter really coming around the corner, we're entering into the fourth quarter of the year, and of course the holidays. Give me some predictions as to how do you see things playing out for your organization in terms of meal distribution, in terms of dealing with the additional numbers of insecurity that's going to rise in the area of food. How do you see things playing out?
I do think we will see more insecurity. We are working hard to move forward with our Thanksgiving, Christmas, holiday meals. Those are the biggest days for City Meals. You know, we were founded around Thanksgiving when it was known that older New Yorkers were going days without food, but because of lack of government funding. So for us, it's critical to make sure there is food on hand. We will likely be delivering in advance of the holiday as well as on Thanksgiving Day and on Christmas Day, just to make sure there is food where it needs to be. Our warehouse is stocked full. If people need meals during the holidays and beyond, it's a simple phone call to 311 to get on meals, and we're ready to deliver. I also think another piece of the holidays is the isolation and loneliness, right? We all have memories of celebrating with family and friends, and the older New Yorkers that we're feeding, and quite frankly, older New Yorkers who are apart from their families now because of COVID, are suffering and have cherished memories also, but they have outlived family, friends, often even their own children. So it really is a critical time to make sure we check in on them and have the food that they need as well.
How can the public play a part? I mean, obviously, you have a great amount of volunteers, but talk to us with the rise of service and need. I know the public can also play a great part in assisting.
Absolutely. Anyone can visit citymeals.org. It's very simple to make a donation. And I think it's important for everyone to know that 100%, every penny that you donate to City Meals on Wheels will go to meal preparation and delivery. Every $8 brings a meal to the door of an older New Yorker who needs it. But also on our website, you can find out about volunteering. We need volunteers. We've been so lucky to have over 25,000 hours of support around COVID deliveries, but that will only continue into the winter months. And also, if there's you or someone you know needs a meal, there's a quick link on there for Get Meals. So it's really a robust site that the general public can do all that they can to support us.
Well, Beth, thank you so much for the great work that City Meals on Wheels is doing. I know things are going to begin to ramp up as we get closer towards winter and the holidays, but thank you for really stepping up and really filling the gap, and particularly here in the borough of the Bronx where there's a lot of challenges. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Daren, so much for shining a spotlight on us.
Well, definitely we got to have you back, as you will come back and share a little bit more with what's going on with City Meals on Wheels. Now, stay with us. We encourage you to don't go anywhere. We have got more open coming up. We'll be right back right after this.
We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
And thank you for staying with us. SHARE is a not-for-profit organization making a big impact in the lives of underserved women who are diagnosed with several types of cancer. Their mission? To connect these women with the unique support system of survivors and peers, creating a community where no one is faced to deal with the disease alone. Here now to share a little bit more about the services in the organization and answering some questions about how the organization is responding to COVID-19 pandemic. We're pleased to be joined by the Chief Diversity Officer of SHARE, Ivis Febus-Sampayo. And thank you so much for being with us, Ivis.
Thank you, Daren. Thank you for inviting us to speak about our wonderful organization today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. No, and thank you for the work that you do. I'll start off by saying that the work that you do is very personal because you got a personal story yourself about cancer.
Yes, Daren. 27 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was a young woman in the prime of my life, and I was actually misdiagnosed for 18 months. I had been complaining to my OBGYN since the moment I had given birth to my youngest son, Ian, and he just kept saying, oh, it's nothing, don't worry, you don't have a family history, you're young women, you exercise, you're fine. My son was not sleeping, I was nursing him. But after about a year, when I finally weaned him, I started to sleep. And I started to realize, wait a minute, this is taking too long. Every time I go back to him, I keep hearing this. So finally, I made another appointment and said to him, you know, the same thing. This is my story. This is what I'm feeling. And he started with the same conversation. It's okay, you're young. And I just said, stop right there. You are going to have to do a clinical breast exam and make sure that there's nothing wrong. I don't think there is, but my gut instinct is telling me something's not right. Long story short, I was then diagnosed with breast cancer at a very young age. I was only 38 years old. My two boys, Christopher and Ian, were 10 and 2 years of age. And it was quite difficult. I went through chemotherapy. I went through surgery. I had hormonal treatment. I had radiation. And I kept seeing older women, not women that looked like me, that were my age, in the chemo suite. So I realized that I needed to use my story to help others. I was raised by a wonderful mother in the Spanish Harlem area of New York City who taught us that when you cut, everyone bleeds the same color. Mm-hmm. And I've taken that to heart. I realized that I wanted to be able to help as many women as I could, not only using my story, but educating myself to become a better advocate.
Yeah.
I joined SHARE almost 25 years ago, and they hired me as the first Latina SHARE director. What happened then was the Latina SHARE program was pretty new. We had 2 support groups, a small helpline, and only 1 educational program per year. Now, keep in mind that things have increased, things have changed, and throughout the years, I built, along with my staff and my advisory committee as it grew, to grow the Latina SHARE program. And then about 9 years ago, I handed it off to 2 women who had used our services, who had come through the support group, through the helpline, who volunteered. Then I hired them to become survivor patient navigators at 2 hospitals that see a lot of underserved community members. And
let me jump in. I just want to jump in real quick and ask a question about that, because when you talk about, you know, handing the baton off a little bit, you hand the baton off, and of course, you know, you talk about being that first Latina. Talk to me about those healthcare disparities when it comes to breast cancer and cancer itself.
Excuse me. Yes, well, that was the thing. There wasn't very much in 1996 when I started with SHARE. Now, thank God, it's grown exponentially, not just within the organization, but also nationwide. Some of the disparities that have occurred for years is that the Black women, and I can give you some of the statistics, sorry, chemo brain doesn't allow me to memorize it, but according to the American Cancer Society, 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer, about 252,000 or more per year, with an estimate of 40,000 dying of breast cancer. Now, the rates in white women are about 130.8 per 100,000 women, and from that, a mortality rate of 20%. For Blacks, 126.7, with 28.4% women dying of breast cancer. And for Latinas, about 93.8 get diagnosed annually, with 14% dying.
Wow.
The numbers don't meet. We see that more Black women are being diagnosed at a younger age. And although their rates are a little lower or close to white women, what's happening is more of them are dying. 40% more Black women are dying of breast cancer. And this is why, as I said, we all bleed the same. When I got the opportunity to become the Senior Director of Programs, my first mandate was, I want to go and build an advisory committee of Black women who are survivors, who care about the community, who want to reach out to the community and educate it. And I was blessed with 3 wonderful women. 1, unfortunately, since then has passed away. But the point being that we started to grow that program so that women in the community could see somebody who looked like them, who cared, who had the knowledge, and who could educate them about breast cancer, not only the rates, but also the lives that it touches and the importance of becoming your own self-advocate. And I know there's always been issues related to the medical system, and rightfully so, but we need to advocate for ourselves. And that is one of the key things we teach with our AfroShare community outreach program.
Give me some insight into someone right now who might be dealing with cancer, because you don't just deal with breast cancer, you deal with several forms of cancer.
Right.
So if there's someone out there that's watching and saying, listen, I may need some peer assistance, I may need some help in navigating this, talk about the different types of cancer that you deal with and what's available to New York City residents.
Okay, so perfect. What we have is Share started with breast, and then 25 years ago, they started with ovarian cancer. They just celebrated the 25th anniversary. And then this year in 2020, we started our uterine cancer program. And the reason why we started the uterine cancer program is because more women, more Black women, are dealing with endometrial cancer and dying of it. So it is important to learn the facts. They can reach out to Share anytime. We have our helpline that is in English, Spanish, Japanese, and Chinese. And we also, if you speak, let's say, Yiddish or French or Greek, you can have someone call the English, and then we'll have a volunteer that speaks that language who's a peer and been trained, call them back. But we have our helpline, which is 844-275-7427. It's 844-ASK-SHARE. And you can go onto our website, www.sharecancersupport.org. There are various tools that you can use. There is information about all three cancers. There's information about our support groups. In New York State, we have support groups in English and in Spanish. We have some that are focusing on the Black community. We had 2 in place at Harlem, 1 in Brooklyn, and we just started the uterine cancer. But came 2020, COVID came to the world. So Share was just amazing. We're filled with passionate women. 50% of the staff are peers. We've had breast, ovarian, or uterine cancer. And those that haven't are just as passionate and they want to help. So what we did is we quickly turned on a dime and we went virtual. So we started with telephone groups, then we went on to Zoom. The Latina Share program noticed quickly that women who came especially from Central and South America were using WhatsApp. So that's where we're having the support groups and a lot of phone calls. So many women, especially from the underserved communities, as you will know, not only are they dying, but their family members are dying. And this is a lot of stress. You're dealing with breast cancer, and then now you're also dealing with grief and loss.
Yeah. Well, Ivis, I want to tell you, thank you so much for sharing with us here on Open about the great work that you do. And I want to let people know that there's a way that you can tap in and be connected. But Ivis, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having. And I'll tell you, it's not me, it's the team. We work because we're passionate and we really care. We've been in those shoes.
Yeah. Well, certainly from being in the shoes to now being a peer supporter and doing great work. Ivis, thank you so much for being with us. Now, I do want to tell our viewers, if you do want more information, what you can do is go to the website, sharecancersupport.org. Once again, sharecancersupport.org. Well, unfortunately, we come to the end of our show today. Want to thank all of our guests for joining us, but most of all, I want to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in. Now, if you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recablecast on BronxNet's Channel 67. If you have Optimum, that would be Channel 2133, or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. And of course, if you want a brand new episode of Open, come back on Friday morning. My girl, Rena Valentine, will bring you arts and entertainment. Until then, Daren Jaime saying take care, God bless, and most of all, keep our channel wide open. See you soon.